Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Virginia Commonwealth University in Qatar. It is truly my pleasure to welcome all of you to this important and timely conversation, Forms of Resistance, Palestinian Art Today. We're really delighted to host this discussion as part of Qatar Creates Talks within the broader Qatar Creates cultural platform led by Qatar Museums. Under the visionary leadership of its chairperson, Her Excellency Sheikh Al-Mayasa bin Hamad bin Khalifa Al Thani, Qatar Creates brings together extraordinary voices, creatives and thinkers from around the world. Each year, it continues to surpass expectations, striking inspiring exchanges, remarkable ideas, and a shared energy that celebrates the power of art and dialogue. At VCU Arts Qatar, we are proud to contribute to this positive energy and to celebrate creativity as a profound means of connection, reflection, and transformation. Our panel today will remind us that creativity can be an act of resistance, a means of survival, and a record of truth. Through painting, architecture, installation, and performance, these artists carry forward stories of loss, of resilience, of belonging, and of hope. For many of us in this room, the images, the memories, the longing that art evokes are not abstract. They are lived, and yet, through that lived experience, we also encounter courage, beauty, and the enduring belief that art can illuminate what history may conceal. Our moderator this afternoon is Dr. Nada Shabout, a professor of art history at the University of North Texas and a visiting professor at NYU Abu Dhabi. Dr. Shabout is one of the leading voices in the study of modern and contemporary art, and we are so grateful to have her guide this discussion. And a warm welcome to our distinguished panelists, Samia Halabi, a Palestinian-American visual artist based in New York, Taysir Batniji, a multidisciplinary artist born in Gaza, who divides his time now between France and Palestine, and Dima Srouji, an architect, artist, and researcher born in Palestine, whose work examines cultural aspects of displacement and restitution. Each of them, in their own way, reminds us that art is not merely a reflection of the world, but a way of changing it. This discussion coincides with the opening of We Refused at Methaf, Arab Museum of Modern Art, presented as part of Qatar Creates and marking Methaf's grand reopening. The exhibition includes works by our panelists among a group of distinguished artists. Thank you all for being here and for being part of this creative community. And thank you to Qatar Creates Talks, to Dr. Jelena Trkulja for giving us space for such a vital conversation. Please join me in welcoming our moderator, Dr. Nada Shabout, and our panelists. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this generous introduction, and thank you everyone for being here. It is a pleasure, and I'm grateful for Qatar Creates and Sheikh Mayasa for the program and for inviting me to be in conversation with the wonderful artists you see on stage. I'm also happy to be at VCUQ. It feels like home at times, coming to visit here. I am also, honored and feel great pleasure to be sitting in panel with three artists who, although were just introduced, in reality, they do not need any introduction. And I think we should start by congratulating Samia for the Munch Award that she just received, as many of the other accomplishments that she has. So, what we will do today really is start, we're here to have a conversation between us, the artists, and I am only here to facilitate that conversation. But we will start with each artist giving a short presentation about their work, and then, sort of have this conversation that on themes that converge in the work that each one of them does. So in preparation for this panel, kind of identified a number of convergences that I'm going to just put on the table, few of them, so we can discuss. Perhaps the artists will address them as they talk about their work, but also definitely should have a conversation between us. I mean, as you're aware, we have three generations of Palestinian artists sitting here with us, none of whom actually lives in Palestine. And so that in various ways influence or impact the way they practice art. We also know that we do not have the luxury of being sort of neutral, even just witnesses, but rather many of us have found ways of activism through our work, and that is definitely true for the artist we have with us here. And so how is art a form of activism and sites of resilience, as the panel introduces in each of the artists' practice, is something that we can look into and discuss. Also, the challenges and boundaries of living in diaspora or exile without, sort of dealing with what you see today in the current news, but not necessarily always as a lived experience. But also, in my scholarship, I often work with the notion of istilham al-turath, which in Iraqi art, I invoke as a central provocation for renewal in art, while connecting history and performing modernism. The concept, of course, is not unique to Iraq or even just the Arab world, but most of the post or continuously colonized countries and peoples feel the need for that engagement. Sites of memory are part of the intangible heritage as well. And so how do each of the artists, of the intergenerational Palestinian artists presented here, deal with the notion of heritage in their work? And then lastly, of course, abstraction, something that we know well in the work of Samia Halabi, as she introduced us to several aspects of it that she will kind of help us talk, she will talk through her work about, but also in the work of the other artists. How has abstraction been a style, a methodology, a language of expression in the work of the artist? So what we'll do now, we'll start with Samia, who I will guide through the slides. So let's see if the, there you go.
So I'm going to start by dealing with abstraction. All human activity is an extract from nature. We learn from nature. Everything we do is an abstraction from nature. We make language, we make numbers, we make methods, we make recipes. We don't create material. Nature gives us the material free of charge. So everything we do is abstraction. And in Western art, the propaganda is that Renaissance art is realistic, but Islamic medieval art is decoration, and abstraction is born out of the brain, has nothing to do with reality. All three are false, in my view. First of all, any Renaissance painting is not more a reflection of nature than a feudalist period Islamic symmetry, panel of symmetry. Symmetry is learned by mankind from nature. So tell me what's more realistic, a general idea of nature that teaches us more, or an image of one person at one time in history? So you decide, but for me, they're both equally reflections of nature. Maybe I prefer the Arab one. Then let's go to the next thing, which is thought of about abstraction. It means nothing. It's just decoration, it's just color. Well, to many people who are looking, it means something, but they don't know how to verbalize it. And I think take the cue from Arab art. There are natural principles in reality, general principles, which we extract and make art with. And that's how I make my paintings. It comes out from reality. And what was the third thing about abstraction? I forgot, but that's okay. So what inspires me then about inspiration? I'm always looking at nature, and sometimes people get bored with me, and I'm saying, look, isn't that amazing? Right now, the floor here, the so-called white floor or eggshell or yellow, is yellowish compared to the gentle gray on the rug here. But over there, the gentle gray is paler than the yellowish floor because of the lighting and the shading going on. There's beauty around us in everything. There's beauty around us in your faces. There's an amazing geometric organization taken there. And the principles that I extract from everything I see, I put in my painting, sometimes consciously, sometimes unconsciously. There was once a very important period where I fell in love with autumn leaves. And how can I make something as beautiful as autumn leaves? I cut them into squares. I drew them, I copied them in the Renaissance manner of use your eye, freeze, and draw something. Just nothing would work. The leaf is just completely demolished me. There was nothing I could do that persuaded me that I was doing anything as beautiful as the leaf. So I said, okay, there's a lesson there. And eventually I said, the lesson it's teaching me is that it grew. And so how can I grow a painting? So I pursued that. So the leaf taught me how to grow a painting. So be very brave. How do you grow a painting? That's not easy to configure. So you take it step by step. I'm not going to go there. About the political part, I'm watching the time. About the political part, I've been saying to myself, everyone asks me, well, some people ask me, where's Palestine in your work? There's a lot of pressure on us to do what the community tells us. And I love my community. Oh, and by the way, a little correction, I did live in Palestine. I was born in 1936. I lived my first 11 years of life in Palestine as an Arab country, and Israel was not created yet. And I can dream of it being destroyed as soon as possible. So yes, so I decided that my art is simply a craft. If you take the word art and look at it etymologically, you'll find that really where it comes from is just handwork. And everybody likes to do handwork. You know, there are those who like cleaning the house. Cooking is an art, chess is an art, driving is an art. Everything we do with our hands, and almost everybody likes to do something. And so I feel that these crafts that we have, the visual craft that I educated in myself and learned from my teachers, can be applied to anything visual. I can make a dish of hummus and decide to decorate it in a very special way using that same craft that I make a painting with. So I decided I want to make political stuff. I don't want to make a painting that's half-cooked politics so the gallery will approve it, so 10 people will look at it. That's not politics to me. So I'll make very blunt posters. My bluntest posters say, you want peace? Dismantle and disarm Israel. On the other side, the poster says, Israel makes Auschwitz in Gaza. That was 30 years ago, not 2 years ago. So that's my political art. It's blunt, it's a poster, it's a banner. And I love Palestine in other ways, and I have political ideas about what's going on. And I did a book about the massacre in, I think I'm nearly over my time. I did a book on the massacre in Kafr Qasim, and it was illusionistic drawing in a documentary way. And I do documentary drawings of how they destroy our olive trees, which is our economy. At the same time, I do my abstraction is what I love to do, which I do with this idea in mind that I want to take the language forward. I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sandra. And, thank you for the correction. I do know that you lived in Palestine, so thank you.
Finally, I think I will speak in English because translation would take a lot of time. I'm sorry, my English is not so good, but I will try And if I need help, maybe I ask Dima, Samia, or Nada. I will try to be brief and simple in my explication. In fact, I'm a multimedia artist, so I'm working with painting, drawings, photography, installation, sculpture, working a lot with photography, image in general, and photography or video. I draw an inspiration for my work from my life, my experience, my path as artist, as Palestinian, and human being. And it happens that, and I believe that the experience of each Palestinian reflects in one way or another the experience of the Palestinians as people, and what they are going through. There is also the fact that I am living between two countries, two cultures, two geographies, Europe, France, and Palestine. And this is, with time also, become this kind of no man's land, become between these two spaces, become also a source of inspiration for my work. So the works I created in the last maybe 20 years, it's the objects I create are often on the border between two things, between visibility and invisibility, materiality, immateriality, presence, absence. So they reflect somehow this state of being all the time in between, and also a form of emergency. So that said, I prefer to talk today about works I am doing now, and some of them are ongoing. They started, actually, this work, for example, I call it homeless colors. They are drawing with pencil, colored pencil on paper, mostly abstract all the time. I make these drawings with pencils I found by the street. This is why I call them homeless colors. I started this series before, in September 2023. It was a period after a great major exhibition I had in France, for which I worked for almost 2 years. And it was kind of a period where I was in kind of lack of inspiration. So when I found these colors by the street, I said to myself, maybe I find something to keep busy. So I decided to make drawings with these pencils. I had to estimate what format of paper I need to empty or to consume the pen I found or the pencil. And I find the format, and I would spend days, sometimes weeks, on some of these drawings just to fill the paper with the layers after layer. Actually, I do some drawings before October 7, and I thought I would stop after 5 or 6 drawings because it is too long, and I didn't feel it really. But after 7 October and what happened in Gaza, what happened to my family, I have lost many of my family, members of my family. It took me a long time to really feel like the desire maybe to do something. What happened, it was beyond any form of expression, any form of any words, any language of any kind. So I turn back to these drawings, and I find in this way of working and to be connected to my work some comfort. It offers me space of meditation, of concentration. I would spend the whole day just drawing. We can switch to see. We can.
Do the colors signify anything, or?
No, in fact, there is no any significant for these drawings. There is no any expression. If there is really any expression, the density of colors from one place to another on the drawing, it translates maybe somehow my mood and my feelings, because it goes through emotion, maybe my hand and into the drawing. Yeah, that's all. This is another series that started maybe 1 year later. I call it Remnant. In fact, since the genocide this started in Gaza, I follow some Telegram group news, and so to follow in how you said the breaking news, yeah, to see what's happening second by second. So you receive many photos and many videos, and most of the time, these photos and videos take a long time to download. But before the images download, they are totally flu. You don't understand anything about the content of the photo, of the image or the video. So I take screenshot and I translate this in oil painting. So there is a caption when I take the screenshot explaining the image. This is the only thing that describe it is in the caption beside the painting, describe the scene, but without seeing anything in the scene. You just see the blue color. It was for me a sort of attempt to avoid the inevitable, something that you cannot avoid. This is what is happening, you know. Yeah, and to finish, I would like to talk about this project, which you will see in the exhibition we refused. I started also this in like March, April 2024. In my work, you will see also in Mahaf, there are 3 works about the key as a pattern, as object, as symbol, because the keys in the Palestinian history and the Palestinian memory is very, very important since 48 and what happened, the Nakba, etc. So it goes through my work really in different level, on the collective level, but also in the personal one. This don't want to go to spend long time speaking about this because you will see it in the exhibition. But this work, it was had kind of more emergency. So. And this was a way also, because I work with the key as object before, it was also another way to come back to my work and maybe easily, to find more connection and to be again in my work. So I started to ask people from Gaza, started with friends and relatives, to send me photos of their bunch of keys. And I asked each one to send me where he were living, where was his house, when he left his house, where he would go, or where he went, and what happened to the house, and if there were loss of people, etc., etc. It was hard at the beginning to ask these questions. I spent sometimes maybe 20 or 30 keys at the beginning. There were no informations because it was so delicate to ask people in these conditions to send you these informations. They are under bombs, under fire, under destruction and killing. But for me, it was important to have this documentation. So we can go. So each keys has this information written with pencil on the wall directly, and. There's one person who helped me really to have many of the keys. She were working with refugees, young women who were working with people who are displaced. So she was willing to help me in this project. And I had conversation with her not a few months ago. She said to me, you know that many of people that we document the cases, they have been killed. So, many of these houses, maybe all of them, has been destroyed. So I finish my intervention here. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. I'm going to go through, do I see your slides? Like Sami, I was also born and raised in Palestine and left when I was 13 during the second Intifada and actually moved here. So I lived in Doha from the age of 13 to 18 when I graduated high school and took a photography class at ACU when I was 16. So it's nice to be back. I haven't been back since, so it's good to be back. I think one question that a lot of Palestinian artists, at least my friends, are thinking about today is where does optimism live and how can we continue producing work in such a dark time? And so a few months into genocide, I wrote a little bit trying to kind of wrap my head around what on earth we're doing and what, if it makes sense to even continue making work. Which of course it does, but I thought it would be good to read this out loud because it gives a little bit of context to the practice and the way that I think and make work. I'll keep it brief, but in a time of unfolding genocide and never-ending Nakba, Palestinian artists everywhere are wondering where optimism lives. We are simultaneously fighting for our people's survival and making sure that our presence continues while finding ways to imagine liberation and return. We Palestinians inside and outside of the land are in a constant search in and on the ground for something that we are in the process of articulating while the dust has yet to settle. We're beginning to understand that there is a relationship between our ascent towards liberation and our burial in the ground. The subterranean rise is a contradiction that defines much of what it means to be Palestinian today, and it's by design. The louder and more present our voice, the deeper we are penetrated into mass tombs. However, the systems at hand are making an ontological error. They've forgotten that for us to rise, we must first descend. Liberation for Palestinians begins below, in the strata, in and between our remnants, and in the cosmic realm above simultaneously. The land is our battleground and our burial place, but it's also our witness and our archive and our paradise. The vertical dimension flows between the real and the surreal in Palestine. The viral chant, Jannah, 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 describes this contradiction of heaven on earth, a death in the land, and an afterlife underground. As a response to this and to my childhood experiences in Palestine, my practice constantly moves vertically from grain to cosmos, from subterranean ruins to imagined futures, unearthing the political, emotional, and material memories embedded in the ground. And as the dust sets on mounds of rubble over miles of destroyed lives in Gaza, we can only imagine that scale expanding to the West Bank while holding our breaths. In between the nightmares, both awake and at night, Palestinians everywhere are consciously and subconsciously building an imagination of liberation. Whether that is through our senses, smelling olive oil that your mom brings to you to your London apartment, or a small ma'luba gathering in a New York apartment, or a sonic performance in Beit Lahem, in cultural centers, liberation is constant and is already taking place everywhere. To create a metaphysical state of return and resistance, the imaginary is crucial for us to access that space in order for it to ripple into the physical. Making and teaching for me is the way I try to reach as close as possible to what liberation might feel like, making films, objects, and archives, and glass vessels and texts, and they allow me to unfold potential motions of liberation. So the land itself is the medium in which apartheid takes place, and the layers above and below the Earth's surface is where injustice happens, but it's also where liberation does too. And so the ground, I think of it as an infinite space where generosity and meaning exist deeply. And so to talk about the works, there are a few projects here that kind of move us from, this relationship of the grain of sand to the object scale of the vessel to a much larger kind of understanding of Palestinian liberation, almost as a sense of psyche rather than a physical moment or an event. And so really the whole practice is kind of about cultural heritage and the presence of the Palestinian body and the Palestinian identity through multiple scales and multiple materials. So for example, this is a project called Ghosts from 2019 that I did for Amman Design Week, actually curated by Noura Sayeh, who is here. And the exhibition was actually replicating a lot of the Palestinian glass vessels that were excavated from Palestine over a century, and now the original are displaced in multiple Western institutions, like the Met and the V&A and so on. And the idea was to replicate them as ghostly figures with incredible glassblowers that I've been working with for the last 10 years, the Twam family in Jabba, which is a small village between Ramallah and Jerusalem. And they were exhibited almost like, haunting the spaces that they exist in, as a reminder that we deserve restitution, that even our objects are in displacement, and I think of them also as refugees. So there's an imagination here of what it might look like for our objects to come home. This is the same installation with some more context at the Victoria and Albert Museum, where tomb cards were drawn for each object. You can see them inserted in the V&A glass galleries. And I identified exactly which objects were from Palestine at the V&A and drew tomb cards and told each object where it should be returned to. So for example, this one said, return to Nablus because it's a kuhl bottle and there's families in Nablus that still make kuhl today, for example. This is a close-up of some of those forgeries or replicas, depending on how we think about them. This is another installation of the Maternal Exhumations Project that brings those glass vessels, but actually includes them in a context of the archaeological site itself, how the excavation was dug up by making archaeological 2D grids on top of our landscape. And it's actually in honor of the Palestinian women that did a lot of the excavations for places like Harvard and so on. And it took me to the history of glass blowing in Palestine, where I found out that glass blowing was invented in Palestine but even before the Roman Forum, before the Roman Empire. And there's a really magical river called the Nahr al-Na'main, or the Belus, that had incredible sand that was rich enough for people to go bathe there and cleanse their bodies and heal different ailments. And this is an installation called the Red River that looks at that history, and the sand was used to make glass from that river, and now it's highly polluted because of the weapons factory right next door, where it's called the Rafael Systems. It's between Akka and Haifa, where the Iron Dome is made and all the missiles are made right there. So the river is now super red because of that pollution. And a contemporary form here with the Twam family as well, with different kinds of, kind of intuitive design. In this case, more of a formal experimentation rather than research-based. I'm probably getting a little close to out of time. But this is an installation called Maintaining the Sacred, where I also think about how glass is used in the history of architecture in the Middle East. And it's a story that came from research on the Dome of the Rock, where a lot of the windows called Qamariya windows, which means the moon window, were destroyed by the Israeli offensive forces. And each one of those windows takes about 6 months to make. And the maintenance there is really skilled know-how. So unfortunately, the last artisan there retired recently. So I did this window out of stone rather than plaster, as a kind of, again, in honor of the craftsmen that maintain our cultural heritage there. This was for the Doha Biennial a couple of years ago, using archaeological sites from Palestine to create a kind of a future possibility of what an archaeological site in the future might look like. So it's kind of combining past, present, and future imaginations with material cultures like stone and glass in the history of Palestine, and making sure that our artisans continue the know-how, where there's this kind of relationship to the value of glass blowing and stone making, as if it's super valued when they're in museums behind glass vitrines. But the reality is that those same families still exist hundreds and almost thousands of years later, and they still know how to make all these things. And so the idea of the practice is to showcase some of those incredible skills that we still have that are generations old. And yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, all. I mean, for each one of your extremely rich experience of art making to start with, which, again, working on Iraqi art for Iraqi artists during, for example, the Ba'ath and Saddam reign, the only way they could resist is through making good art. And so to them, that was the activism. Didn't need to be direct. And I see that in all of your work. I mean, your work is based on creativity, but also on research, on keeping the past alive, on understanding how to move forward, and even hope, which is extremely hard to, sort of maintain today in just turning on the news and what we see. So, and in each of you seeing each other's work, how do you understand that form of activism? In Samia, you were saying that you did direct work bluntly in your face, but of course, your engagement with nature and abstraction, and even correcting the notion of what abstraction is in itself a form of activism, because it is, revises history. It engages with many of the arguments that we've been trying to make theoretically, through writing history, but you do it through your work as well, without necessarily having to kind of, be very direct about it.
Well, first of all, I want to blow away the idea that art can change anything in society or in politics. I think making pictures is a practice that humanity has always done, and these pictures have given birth to a lot of technologies that feed us and house us. And so the other thing I want to say, I'm from Palestine, but I have no problem with identity. I think it's those who rule us who keep telling us identity, identity. The whole world is my oyster. I am responsible as a painter to know the history of South Africa, North Africa, China, all of it. Otherwise, I'm not really a picture maker. Otherwise, I'm not really trying to be at the leading edge of new language for pictures. Pictures grow just like mathematics. Their language grows, they become more complex. We do political work, and it's enriching, and we do cultural preservation, but eventually, let's face it, it's going to be either financial collapse of the West or military collapse that's going to liberate us, not paintings.
You want to say something?
Respond to that? Well, I think there's a relationship of the kind of collective Palestinian psyche of, how do we, not necessarily make change in the world in a physical way, but there's, I think, at least for me, my art practice is a coping mechanism. And so getting towards a collective kind of psyche of what liberation might feel like is I think, possible through making things. I think healing is super important, because if there is no relationship to healing after 75 years of intergenerational trauma, we know what that looks like. No, it's kind of violence, kind of continuing from one generation to the next. And so when I say using art as a form of making liberation, I think there's multiple ways to think about that. But I agree that we can't do it alone. But healing through making is super important, and I think that does help us move towards liberation. Otherwise, we'll repeat what the Zionists did to us in some way, maybe 75 years from today. the circle of violence has to end, I think.
Thanks, you.
I don't know what I can add, but for me, the role of the artist in such context, like the one that we are living in Palestine and with what is happening, is to maybe to offer a different point of view on reality, and to avoid the cliche, to avoid the purely political discourse. And this is what I'm trying in my work, is to inscribe my experience, my work in a universal space, than to be only related to one event, one problem, or one moment. When I deal with issues like memory, identity, disappearance, of course it is comes from my experience as a Palestinian, but the way I transform this in an art form or object, it talks to all people, and even in my work, I'm trying to question also the notion or the idea of representation. I do this in many photographic projects. Maybe I don't have them here, but especially I work with photography, and this is what I'm talking about is more visible in my photographic works, because I'm dealing with photography, but in a very atypical work, not typical work. So I depart often from photography towards to create other forms. But just the photography or the document, it could be archives, could be photos that I take from internet, and some projects were done by photographs or people that I asked to do photography or photographs for me yeah. Thank you.
Sure.
They talk about trauma, but I don't feel traumatized. And I look at the people of Gaza, and I think they are the highest morality, the highest ethics that I've seen in humanity right now. Who are traumatized are those IDFers committing suicide. That's who is mentally off. We are not mentally off. We're here, we're suffering. Lots of people suffer all over the world. My experience is Palestinian and Iraqi and Chinese and American. I've flown in airplanes all over the place. I meet people. Humanity is much more interesting to connect with than individual people in individual nations and divide ourselves. Nationalism is the very essence of what capitalism wants to create. The very essence of us is to erase it, us being the working class and the future. And now this is why my abstract painting, now that is the most political thing I do, because abstraction was born in the past 150 years during working class revolution. It's the optimism that the working class brings up that promotes new inventions in painting, and it's what brought Impressionism, the very first ideas of the general Cubism, Futurism, the idea of simultaneity, things at the same time, and on with the abstract expressionists, the Industrial Union movement. Abstraction is the culture of the working class, and it's a transitional phase from the backwardness and rottenness of capitalist culture to the future.
I mean, true, true to some extent, but there are certain realities that I would, as an art historian myself, who would love to believing maybe 20, 30 years ago that perhaps we will get to that point where nationalism is not an issue, except what we see is, a strong revert to nationalism in the sense of every country wanting to be great again. So, I mean, that in itself, enforces nationalism. But also we don't have the luxury of sort of, melting into everything else because we are under attack. So our identities are under attack. So how do you sort of, consolidate that in your work? I mean, you're sitting here wearing a Palestinian dress, so you clearly are making visible part of that identity that is under attack. How do you address that in the work in general, while with this idea of humanity?
Okay, I'll do it briefly because the others have a right to talk too. I have no problem. I'm born in Palestine. I love Palestine, and I want Israel to get the hell out of there. There's no doubt about that. And we want to preserve this. We want to preserve it. We want to also advance it. We don't want to freeze. And Palestinian resistance, we're not the only ones who suffer, by the way. What's going on in the rest of the world is also very horrible. And if you want to look at nationalism and international politics, look at how far advanced China is compared to the US. I mean, look at the world, not just at little parts of it. Then you'll see what I'm saying. But we advance and everyone advances, and think of well, let me go to Palestinian resistance. Palestinian resistance has been stubborn as hell. From the very first minute the British walked on our ground, we were resisting them. We became an inspiration to the whole world. Our Palestinian flag is all over the world now. Most people carry a Palestinian flag. Let's push through with our responsibility to become international leaders. We don't want to reduce.
Yeah, I guess I have I agree that we should definitely not play the victim card. That's really important, not to be defeatist or change our relationship to Palestine because, there's a system of violence there at all. I think, though, that what a lot of us live through is absolutely not normal, no? I mean, there's a biological shift that happens when you kind of experience these events of violence, and it really does stay intergenerationally. So I think there's definitely families out there that have never struggled, and that does create an entirely different world perspective, and that's where a lot of the political realities in the West start to become really visible. You can when you have a small talk in the art circles and the art market in the UK, you could definitely tell like who understands the world really well and who doesn't. And I think that comes from lived experience. So I do feel like there is a sense of responsibility, at least in my generation, to really think about how can we make things that create a stronger collective. And there, that comes from a lot of different. You can do that in a lot of different ways. But on the point on identity, there's also the relationship to the land that's not national, right? There's this relationship to the material culture. I think, for example, the color and the feeling of the stone resonates with me in a very deep way that I don't feel elsewhere in the world. Same thing with the way that glass speaks to me. Maybe it's just growing up there and being around the habayel and kind of living with the landscape and being around nature and growing up with these objects that I've kind of become obsessed with. That kind of just resonates with me in a almost a spiritual way that a lot of other places don't feel that way for me. And I think a lot of Palestinians probably feel that way, that we're up there. And maybe it's a relationship to displacement that creates that emotional connection. But there's definitely a relationship of the evocative object in my work that kind of carries these memories in them. And so I think of it as a channel in some ways to kind of translate the spiritual relationship to the land through making objects. And ideally that it carries the Palestinian identity, but I don't necessarily think of it as a national one. Yeah.
Taysir, you have something to add?
صحيح، يعني أنا يمكن بدي أحكي بالعربي عن هذا الموضوع، يمكن أسهل إلي، لأنه أنا بعتبر إنه الايدنتيتي، يعني أنا لما من خلال أعمالي بتوجه للآخرين، بتوجه من موقع ما، وهو موقعي كفلسطين. وبعتبر انه اقدر في شغلي اتوجه للعالم واخاطب العالم من خلال شغلي ولغه يفهمها الاخرين، هو وكفنان قبل كل شيء، كفنان وكفلسطيني، ليس فقط كفلسطيني وايضا كفنان وكانسان، هو تعبير عن انسانيتي ورفض لدور الضحيه. زي ما قالت ساميه كمان قبل شوي انه الاخرين بتوقعوا منا كفلسطينيين انه نعبر عن انفسنا بطريقه ما، من خلال رموز معينه، اشكال معينه، يعني فهذه الاشياء مش يعني يمكن صعب للمشاهدين انه يشوفوها بطريقه ملموسه في شغلي او يعني مباشره، فدائما هي يعني بطريقه غير مباشره. فالتحدي الاكبر انه الاستمرار، وانه احنا نضل محافظين على انسانيتنا في حياتنا اليوميه، في عملنا كفنانين، في علاقاتنا مع الاخرين، لانه انسانيتنا هو هذا حرب الاباده هي اللي حاولت تنتزعها منا، هو انسانيتنا كفلسطينيين. يعني اذا بدي ارجع للاعمال، مش يعني مش امامي كل اعمالي بس كثير، موضوع الايدنتيتي انا تعاملت معه كثير في اعمالي، وكان في اخر الاعمال يمكن بدي احكي عنه هيك بس بطريقه انه كان اي دي بروجكت، انه اول جواز سفر وصلت فيه لايطاليا انا كان هو عباره عن ليسي باسي، كانت تصدره الاداره المدنيه للحكم العسكري الاسرائيلي، وكان بس لمده سنه. فكان مكتوب في خانه الجنسيه كان مكتوب undefined. فهذا العمل يعني كان كمان برافق اول لقاء لي مع الغرب، مع اوروبا ومع وجودي في اوروبا، وضل هذا السؤال، يعني يمكن هذا من بدايه التساؤلات حول معنى الوجود، وجودنا كفلسطينيين، حول هويتنا، حول وعالجته في اعمال كثيره. يعني اذا بترجعوا على اعمال بتروح على الموقع في كثير من الاعمال اللي هي بتتعلق بموضوع الهويه. شكرا.
Do I need to translate? Did you guys get the gist of this? I mean, particularly that one project about talking about when he left, first time he went to Europe, where the laissez-passer that was a year, the duration of a year. It's a document that the Israeli military issued, and in the category of nationality, it says undefined. And so, you know, that sort of in various ways defined what identity is, or the search for identity for Taysir in his work. I mean, identity, as Dima also said, is not just about nationalism, right? I mean, nationalism is the modern sort of, you know, notion of identity, I suppose, as pertains to nation states. But identity is also you as human, part of the human tribe, or part of a artist group, or various different identities exist that are sort of also at times very much under attack. But particularly as Palestinians today, and as you live in different places of the world, you practice in different places of the world. And you feel the trauma, or you don't feel it in different places. Depending on maybe the distance and duration of being, or relationship to Palestine. Samia, when was the last time you were in Palestine? 2 years ago. And you go regularly? You go regularly? بتروحي? You used to before? Yeah. Taysir?
Last time I was in Gaza was November 2022, but it was after 10 years where it was impossible for me to go.
Dima?
I was there last month, and I try to go back once or twice a year.
And so when you go back, do you feel that your understanding of the various issues and even your being as a Palestinian is the same? Does it change? Does it differ when you're in Palestine and when you're not in Palestine, you're in Paris or London or New York? Dima, you want to start, or Taysir?
Yeah, I think we feel Palestinian everywhere, but maybe the distance allows sometimes to see things from maybe another point of view, another, how we said, you are not in direct يعني أنت مش في اشتباك مباشر مع الواقع. في يعني في
You're separated from the reality on the ground.
on the ground on the day. You feel the trauma, of course. You feel the everything, but it's I cannot compare myself in Paris with people who are under bombs, you know, and it's of course there is something different, but yeah, the way maybe it allowed to meditate maybe on what's happening and to look. It's like a mirror. When you look very close, you don't see yourself, but you have to keep some distance to be able to see something.
So that impacts your work?
Yeah.
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 No, go ahead, Sam. Yeah, there's a very strange thing that happens every time. When I'm in London, I feel like I'm mourning Palestine all the time in many ways, you know. Yeah, I think because from a distance it feels like it's changing so quickly and in such a dark, you know, the perspective is so dark from when you're outside. And there are a lot of reasons why we mourn Palestine today. It's not just the politics. There's, you know, everyday relationships to family. Just a lot of things constantly change around you. But when I go back, there's this kind of reality that, oh, it's still here. Everything's the same. You know, that the relationship that I have to it hasn't changed. That there's this kind of, I feed off of it so much. And then I'm like, oh, what am I doing outside? You know, why am I not living here? I wish I could stay. And then you leave again, and then you mourn it again. So I think that there's this relationship to displacement that I have where the displacement itself is the violence more than the everyday violence in the West Bank. But that also comes from a lot of privilege where I have an Israeli passport because I was born in the north. So I'm able to move in and out. And yeah, so I have a very particular lens, I think, where it's very different from someone from Gaza or from the West Bank. Yeah. There's a right to movement that I have that a lot of people don't. Yeah.
I would like, sorry, go ahead, Sammy. I would like just to add something that even if we are not inhabiting the place, we are not in the place, we are inhabited by the place. And I just want to cite one work that I did once. I take a photo from my window of my room in Gaza of the sky, and there is a TV antenna. And 4 years later, I forgot this photo. I take another photo from the same window in winter. The first one was in summer, and the other one was in winter. And when I went back to Paris, I developed my photograph. I said, I made this photo before. And I look in my photos, I find it was almost the same frame, the same, you know, the same antenna, but one was in summer and the other was in winter. So I made a diptych from these photos. I call it the sky over Gaza.
Well, the way I would answer the question is first to point out, in 1966, I went back. In 1996, I began going back a lot. Twice a week, 3 times a week, I would stay quite a lot of time. And frankly, there's been a change in the Palestinians and the Palestine we're all talking about. It's not frozen. They're very international. They see the world. They know the world more than Midwestern Americans do. If there is somewhere you want to say is not growing and changing, go to outlying societies and locations. Palestinians are super intelligent, super aware. They speak American, they speak English. They, like me, I'm wearing a pair of kids that's made in the USA. Where are those made of? In
Spain.
And your pants, etc. So we live in one world, and the Palestinians are changing, and we are changing. And you have to take this idea into consideration. We're a growing, living society. Yes, we're Palestinians, and the value of our Palestinianness now is the incredible talent being expressed by young people, be they lawyers or artists or scientists or etc., writers. There's a whole new culture growing with Palestine every day, and it's rich and it's wide. So I just, an identity, I think, sorry, but I think it's propaganda of the enemy, not the Israelis, they're the little guys, but the bigger bourgeoisie, you know, to divide us. Go back to your roots. Well, why you? Yes, I want to go back to my roots. Give me my Palestine back. I'll gladly go back tomorrow. But the thing is, that means limit yourself. It means there's a mainstream that owns the whole world, but you only have a small part, a drawer somewhere in the bottom part of the desk. No, no, no. I am many things, and I can be a lot of things. And I didn't do digital art because I'm Palestinian. I did it because I had a brain and an ambition.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. I mean, you know, creativity is, you know, we're sitting here with the three incredible creative artists that contribute to art and art history beside or aside from being Palestinian. This is not, you know, the issue
International art history. We're going to be a force on the whole world stage, not just a little stage
I
called
want to
Palestine.
live in your world, Samia.
I'll
That's
help
a
you.
happy world. That's a happy, strong world. Yes. Yeah. So aside from, I mean, we kind of got stuck on the notion of identity through heritage or, you know, other aspects, but through your just practice as artist, you know, are you able to, I mean, clearly you're telling us, Samia, that you're sort of interrogating the notion of abstraction as understood throughout history and as defined through art history. So you're very aware of the profession and the practice within, you know, and where you sit within that. Is that also the same with you, Taysir and Dima? Are you also as concerned with your position as artist? إنه أنت as a practicing artist, you know, aside from being a Palestinian, but as being a creative artist, are you concerned about your position in art making, in, you know, how you address or your engagement with the art community or even art history?
Of course, I feel myself as actor, not just a spectator or someone from outside. I keep dialogue with art history. I pose myself questions that contemporary artists of my generation, of living artists, ask to themselves and try to address on their work. And this is, for me, it's very important. This is why I said before, this is, besides being Palestinian, I am also an artist, so I feel this, and how is it? I deal with it in this way. That as a I wish how is it? That I am contributing to the art march, to the art history. I hope so.
Well, you certainly are. I don't think you have to worry about that.
Yeah, of course. I mean, precedents are really important to the work. So having references that I look at all the time are really important to me, and mentors are also really important. So not just in relation to art history, but also in relation to the people that I collaborate with and the mentors that I have. Amona Hatoum, for example, lives in London, and we do studio visits often, and she's been a really supportive mentor. And because I teach, it helps me kind of, you know, stay intellectually as on my toes, because the students are really challenging, which is great. I teach architecture, not art, but so the references that I have a lot of the time come from the architecture world and the architecture history. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you know, as an art historian, I mean, we study you, so you are certainly contributing to contemporary art, you know, in various ways, and Samia's contributions, you know, sort of, you know, preceded yours as well. There's so much we can talk about and so much we can discuss, but I am aware that we are out of time, and I want to thank everyone for being here, and thank each one of you, Dima, Taysir, and Samia for sure, for your engagement with the topics and for the beautiful work that you continue to do, and that your creativity, speaks for itself. Thank you.
Thank you all for this wonderful conversation, this powerful topic. And on behalf of Qatar Creates, for those who don't know me, I'm Jelena Trkulja, editorial director of Qatar Creates Talks. I would like to thank all of you who have been part of these talks in this edition, Fall-Winter 2025. And especially I would like to thank our partners at Virginia Commonwealth University School of the Arts, Dean Amir Berbic, and all of his team for their collaboration. I think our collaborations are becoming a mainstay of all of our programming, an example of a real cultural and educational ecosystem that we're building here between institutions in Qatar. So thank you very much for your hospitality. And to everybody in the audience who is from Doha, I would just like to suggest, in case you're not aware of our programming, please join our mailing list and also follow us, especially on Instagram. I think that's where QC is most active for new announcements, because we'll be having many other programming and especially talks throughout the year. But especially in the edition in the spring, in April, from the 12th through the 15th of April 2026, we will have a new edition, as well as we will be again engaging with Design Doha Biennial, and also we'll be bringing Art for Tomorrow conference back to Doha. So thank you all for being here, and have a good evening.